Hey y'all, welcome to the VŌC Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the VŌC Podcast, in which I will be interviewing professional voice actor Brian Sommer, whom you guys might know best as the voice of Danny St. John and Pete from Telltale's The Walking Dead franchise. Thank you so much for coming on, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much for the invitation. Wonderful to be with you.
Thank you so much for coming on and having an interest level in talking to me.
You
Well,
bet.
I've looked through your resume and you've done a lot of video games and animations and whatnot. So when did you get into voice acting?
22 years ago was when I first started. I always had an interest in the craft when I was growing up. Little kid, I used to listen to the old radio dramas from the 30s and 40s. Now, keep in mind, those were rebroadcasts, not the original air date. I'm not that old. Don't let the gray hair fool you. So always had an interest in it. The fact that these very talented actors and actresses were able to paint these very vivid pictures and make these scenes just with voice, nothing else. Of course, sound effects and music, that all had a huge part in it. But this wonderful acting with just the voice, being able to convey the emotions of the scene, being able to paint these pictures of these wonderful far off settings and things like that. So it was always an interest to me. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. There is a voiceover school in the Bay Area called Voice Tracks. And I heard about it. The founder of that school was on a couple of radio shows, and I wrote the phone number for the school down many times, put it in my desk drawer and forgot about it, and would look at it every once in a while. And finally one day I said, you know what, the hell with it. Let's give it a try. Signed up for some classes, did some training, got signed by an agency in San Francisco, started out doing non-union work, video games, commercials, narration, that kind of thing, and was able to get into union work and also got representation in Los Angeles. So now I have representation in San Francisco and also down in Los Angeles. And I'm working video games, feature films, TV series, that kind of stuff. So it's been quite the journey and a lot of fun. 22 years.
Wow. You've been in this industry for quite a while now. Were there any times when you weren't getting any work, If so, what kept you motivated to keep going?
Sure, it's an excellent question, and it affects everybody that's in the business. The thing you have to remember is that this type of a job is not constant. It's not guaranteed. You don't go into the office every day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You basically interview for your job every single day. Those are called auditions. So we get auditions coming in, we record our auditions, we send them off, and you just cross your fingers. Hopefully they pick you. So yeah, I've had 4 jobs in one day, and I've gone a couple of months without anything. So it's this roller coaster ride, right? And everything in between. What keeps you going is, for me, is the love of the craft. I enjoy doing it. I also teach, I also instruct, so that keeps me busy. But the auditions that are coming in, that's, you're performing. Even though you're auditioning, you're still performing. And sometimes that has to be your best performance, because that's how you get the job, right? You've got to be better than everybody else that's submitting an audition. So you bet, it's hit and miss. It's never, every day I go into the studio. It's not that kind of a situation.
Oh yeah, I did want to get to the teaching part because, since you don't get constant work, from voiceover, you do teaching. You are a
Sure,
voice acting instructor.
I am.
Uh, how often do you teach and where?
Uh, Probably 2 or 3 times a month, at the minimum, sometimes more. Voice Tracks, the school that I spoke of earlier, I now teach there, so it's the circle of life, right? So I'm an in-house instructor there. We do in-person classes, we do online classes, everything from 1 hour sessions, private sessions with students, to weekend classes, to 4-week classes. It all depends on the subject matter and the format of the class and everything else. In addition to voice tracks, I also teach with the Global Voice Acting Academy, the GVAA, and that's purely online. So I do classes with them, also one-on-one coaching with students through them, and workshops. So the students will bring in their own scripts. They will audition them, and I'll give them notes as to what I'm hearing and ideas of how to make their auditions a little bit better.
Oh, wow. How did you get into teaching in the first place?
I've always enjoyed teaching. First of all, I have to get the knowledge to be able to feel comfortable teaching. So certainly I needed plenty of experience doing the job myself first before I would ever think that I was, at a level where I could teach someone else to do it. But as I was taking classes at Voice Tracks in San Francisco, that idea was always in my head. So I always kept in contact with them. And at one point, the founder of the school said, "Hey, have you thought about teaching? Why don't you come on in? Why don't we try you out, et cetera, et cetera." And so I've been teaching for probably 15 years, I would think.
Oh, wow. That is really admirable. It really is.
It's a lot of fun, because one thing, I certainly get a lot out of it because it reminds me when I'm telling somebody, hey, you should do X, Y, Z. It's keeping those things in my head. It's keeping the basics in my head. But it's those light bulb moments when the light bulb goes off over the head of the student. Oh, I understand now. It's really a wonderful moment when you connect with a student. And then when a longtime student gives you a call or sends you a message, hey, I just booked my first job. It's a wonderful feeling right there, right? You had a little bit of assistance with that person to help them get to that particular point in their life.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You definitely have a great career, behind you, and you still do voiceover to this day. Is that
Oh, yeah.
correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm still working plenty.
Well, that's really good. But our fans had a lot of questions from a game you did earlier back in 2012, The Walking Dead, where you
Yeah.
were the voice of one of the Cannibal brothers, Danny St. John. So if you remember, because it's been a while, obviously, but I'm sure,
It's what, 12 years since we
yeah,
recorded that. Yeah.
yeah, geez, it's hard to believe it. Do you remember how long could have it taken to get it recorded, and if you had any inspiration for the voice?
Inspiration for the voice, I don't think there was any necessary archetype that I went after. Sometimes you think, oh, it would be really good if we did kind of like this person's voice or this person's personality. I know that it was set in Atlanta, right? Or in Georgia.
Yeah, yeah.
So we knew that these people, this particular character and his family were locals, so we needed to have that type of an accent. But as far as personality goes, that all comes from the audition. It all comes from the specs, the specifications that are listed on the audition sheet. And then also the big thing is the words, the wonderful words that were written by the talented writers. If you really want to learn about your character, there's an old saying in the business, it's all on the page. Meaning, if you really want to know what your character is all about, read the words that were specifically selected for him to say. So drawing from that inspiration really gave him his personality and his very creepy demeanor.
Oh, for sure.
As far as recording him, it's an interesting story. So great question. We actually recorded Danny 3 different times. So they brought me in, we laid it down, and what a great character, right? Here you are, the poor player, plopped down in the middle of a zombie apocalypse where these Walking Dead people are trying to kill you and eat you. And who do you come across? A cannibal. It's like an extra kick in the pants, right?
Yeah.
It's like, not only do you have to deal with the zombies, now you got to deal with this creepy guy that also wants to eat you.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
he definitely had, they wanted him to have, a creepy factor to him.
Yeah.
So when we laid it down the first time, they listened back to it, after a while, they put it to picture, they did whatever they needed to do. And the decision was made that they felt that it was a little too much, like we were revealing our hand a little too soon, that this guy was really creepy. So they wanted to dial that back. So they brought me in for a second time, and we dialed it back, made him a little bit more conversational, made him a little bit more of a regular guy. And they listened to that, and they thought, oh, you know what, maybe we pulled two back. Now he's not, threatening enough. So we found this beautiful Goldilocks, the porridge was just right. Came in for a third time, and we kind of split the difference between the two takes, and we found just the right amount of a little bit of, you're listening to the guy early on and you're going, there's something, I don't know, I don't trust this guy.
Yeah.
So that was the sweet spot for him. So yeah, we actually recorded Danny 3 different times.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I find it funny, especially because, your in-game brother, Andy St. John, voiced by
Right.
Adam Harrington.
Absolutely.
His
Yeah.
character seems to be hiding the situation, in a better way than your character.
Yeah.
So you were giving it away, kind of, is what
Yeah.
the
Well,
game was about.
the differences between those two guys, Andy, I think, was just a regular guy in a horrible situation, right? He definitely, his morals were not, the biggest part of his personality.
Yeah.
But Danny, I think, was legitimately cuckoo. He had some
weird.
things going on. Yeah. And definitely that was revealed in some of the dialogue, and some of the dialogue we recorded that didn't make it into the game. And we can get into that later. But
Wow.
yeah, Danny was a bag of hammers. He was, so of course they gave me that part, right? Because I've made a career out of the bad guys and the goofy guys. I like to joke, the bad guys paid for my house. So
I always say, as a voice actor myself, I think playing bad guys is a lot more fun than playing the good
absolutely.
guys.
Yeah, you take a Disney film, you take the villain out of
Yeah.
it. What do you got? You got a bunch of humans and animals skipping and singing in the forest. Boring. You got to bring the bad guy in, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
The bad
Yeah.
guys are always so much fun.
Oh, by all means, they are. And speaking of good guys, in the second game of, Telltale's The Walking Dead, you voiced Pete, who,
Hmm.
was completely different. And
Yeah.
I personally never noticed that the two characters had the same voice actor. So, how
Oh,
different was your approach for the two characters?
yeah. Pete actually turns out to be a hero, right? So he's the good guy. He's a tough
Yeah.
guy. He's tough on his nephew, to be sure, but he's got a good heart. He wants to do the right thing. Definitely different than Danny, who wants to eat everybody. So, as it always is, the personality of the character really dictates the performance. You have to know what this guy's motive. It's an overused word in acting. What's his motivation? But it truly is. What's his deep? What's his core personality? And that's what drives what he does. So, I was surprised that they actually selected me to come in and do Pete, because if you look at my list of credits, I don't have a lot of good guys on my credits list. So maybe they just wanted to, throw me a bone and give me something to play with. But
Yeah.
again, another wonderful character, great writing, great directing, Dennis Leonard and Julian Kwasniewski directing in there. When you've got so many talented people from all different aspects of this, the writers, the artists, the directors, the sound engineers, Jory Prume, the sound engineer for the recording, all of these wonderful folks, when it comes together, you get something like The Walking Dead. And how many Game
Yeah.
of the Year awards did it get? It was just a big
It's
hit.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still hard to believe you did both of those characters, really. I mean, I have only found out once I've looked up your IMDb page, and I was amazed.
Yeah, the job is to give vocal life to the character. Now, it's great to be able to be a vocal chameleon, somebody like Billy West, where he can do different voices and you can't tell that they're necessarily coming from Billy. My personal hero back in the day was Paul Frees. Now, Paul had a very unique voice, and no matter what character he was voicing, you could tell that Paul's voice was in there somewhere. But he was such a fantastic actor that the characters were very separate. So that's really the key, not necessarily, because they both had a Southern accent, Pete and Danny. But because Pete's motivation, Pete's personality came from a different place, he sounded different. Pete, had, when we originally did him, we actually did him with like a stutter and kind of a vocal affectation. That was the, too far to one side Danny that we did.
Oh, wow.
And a little bit of that stayed in the final version of Danny. But it's really the personalities. Voice is important. Yeah, we're voice actors, but voice is in small print, actor is in big print.
By all means.
Yeah.
Were you surprised when you got cast as Pete?
I was, yeah, because it's not what I was known for. The good guy. I was always tying somebody to a railroad track or trying to take over the universe or burning an orphanage down or something like that. So yeah, it was surprising and obviously honored to come back for another season of this incredible game.
Oh, the only disappointing thing is that Pete didn't really survive that long, but he died a
True,
hero.
true. Yeah, an honorable death, that's for sure.
Well, we got a few questions from some of our fans. So
Wonderful.
Lambot9 is asking if you know anything about the original script of season 2. For your context, season 2 was supposed to be a lot darker than what the final product became to be, and so he's
Yeah.
asking if you know anything about that.
Yeah. When you're dealing with AAA video games, when you're dealing with big projects, Halo, and I've got a story about Halo for you. But when you're dealing with projects that big, secrecy is extremely important. So generally, voice actors are going to get only enough information to be able to record their characters, the context of that moment for that line. It's not discussed, what the game's going to feel like. It's not discussed what the end game is. So when I voiced Tremonius for Halo, the audition was put out under a code name. I auditioned the character. They booked me. They told me to be at this studio on this day at this time. I walked in, say hi. I'm here for I'm here for something. They came out, said hello, walked me back to the studio. It was only after that the studio door was closed that they said, "Welcome to Halo Infinite." So it's that level of secrecy that's out there on these big titles. And you really need, there are things called NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Don't mess with the NDAs. If you're thinking about getting into the business, take those very seriously. So you don't talk about it. You don't discuss it. You don't tell people that you're in it, for a variety of reasons. You're not supposed to. And who knows, maybe you don't show up in the game. Just recently, Helldivers 2. I recorded a lot of stuff for Helldivers 2, and that character ended up not making it into the game.
Oh, wow. But
if I
get paid, right?
Yeah, you get paid, that's
Thank
for
goodness.
sure. So if you go out and you blab to everybody, hey, I'm in Helldivers 2, it's going to be great, and then the game's released and you're not there, you just look like a fool, and you're not acting very professionally. You're not following the NDA. So it was only after the game was released that I was informed that the character had been removed, and perfectly fine. It happens all the time. This is, this isn't about me. It's about the game. It's about the characters. So if the game is better served by removing that character, if we've decided to take the character a different place, I have replaced voice actors because for whatever reason the performance wasn't there. I've been replaced by other voice actors. It happens, and that's just the business.
Yeah,
it's just the business. You don't take it personally at all.
Well, that's cool. That's nice.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have two questions from Loki Smokey. Uh,
Mhm.
while recording Danny, were there any lines in the script that you find yourself coming back to that would help you get back into character before a recording session or so?
Sure. There are things called hook phrases, or I think some people call them advocate phrases or advocate lines. So when you're developing a character or a character voice, you kind of, you get yourself Bart Simpson, I caramba, right? Eat my shorts. Their taglines, the lines that immediately, if you say it, it immediately gets that character back in your head. It gets the voice back into it. Pretty standard. What will happen is, especially if it's a multi-session kind of a situation for a character, if it's a big part, you're going in for 2, 3, 4, who knows how many sessions to get all the lines done. So when you come in for your second session, they're going to play back some of the previous recording for you so that you can sit there and you talk it out and you voice match it and you make sure that you are in the right headspace for the character. So that's pretty standard for multiple session situations. They're going to play a little bit of the previous recording back, you match it, you get in there, boom, we're off to the races. Let's start recording the new lines.
Ah, so that's how it works. Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing to know. And the next question of Loki Smokey would be if you have any tricks that you use for warming up for a session.
Warming up, very important. This is your instrument, right? This is your money maker. You don't want to damage it. So anything, just doing, tongue twisters or singing, anything to warm up the tissue. It's a muscle, just like any other, and it responds to exercise. So, especially if you're going to go in and you're going to do some big, growly, shouty, barking, slobbering monster, you don't want to wake up, get out of bed, and go to the studio and immediately start doing it. You're going to hurt yourself.
Of course.
So, there's all kinds of different warm ups. Just talking to yourself on the way to the studio, singing is a great way to do it because it's a sustained, note sort of a thing. And then, especially, the union fought a couple of years ago for vocal health.
Mm-hmm.
Breaks are now incorporated in the session. So a union session can go 4 hours. That's the standard time. And usually you're going to take probably 3 breaks during that time. You're going to record for 30, 40 minutes. You take about a 10-minute break. And when you're taking that 10-minute break, you're going to have some water. Always have the water, on hand. A little, throat lozenge or something like that. But just not talking. Let it rest in
Oh, yeah.
between those sessions. Especially, like I said, if you're doing some big, growly, snotty monster.
Well, just a few days back, I actually had a session for a AAA game where I was
Mm-hmm.
recording mostly screams as
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
civilian. And I mean, 1 hour of that was,
You bet.
yeah, I had
Yeah.
enough.
You got to be careful. If you're not coming out of a session, a very physical scene, if you're not coming out of that session going, oh, I could really, take a nap right now. You're not doing it right. You have to be in that moment, right?
Yeah. And I mean, especially if you have amazing directors, the job
Sure.
just really becomes even easier and nicer,
Absolutely. You bet. It's a collaborative effort. 100%.
by all means. Moving on, did you have any uncomfortable moments while recording Danny? Because, he also seemed to have a love affection for his weapon, from what I remember.
He
So,
certainly did, didn't he?
so
Yeah.
if you remember any uncomfortable moments.
So I mentioned earlier, some of the dialogue definitely tipped off the fact that Danny was not a normal guy. There was a line where I think it was the scene where he and Lee are standing outside chatting before they had dinner, the dinner. And Danny was reminiscing about in the before times how the local school would do field trips to the
Oh,
dairy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he said something, I can't remember the line exactly, but it was, and forgive me, obviously this is the character speaking. Uh, he said something about how, the little girls would be all dressed in their dresses and things like
Oh,
that.
damn.
And then the follow-up line, and that was real nice. And the way I delivered it, everybody just stopped and they all looked at each other like, I think maybe we went too far with this line. And I don't think it ever made it into the final game.
Oh,
I think
wow.
it's out there in the universe somewhere in like the voice line packets or whatever,
Could
but
be.
I don't think it made it into the actual game. But it was just like, this is, okay, the guy is a cannibal, he's a murderer, and he's a child molester too. Come on.
Wow, too
Jeez, he's a
weird.
horrible person. I left that session and immediately went to the shower. Right?
You
It's
got
like,
all
thank
that
you very, yeah.
greasiness off you.
God. Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that was so funny because I remember everybody look like the writers and the directors looking at each other going, yeah, I don't know about that.
Now, Brian, tell me, I have a couple of lines of Danny, and I was
Hmm.
thinking if you could get back into the character just for a few lines to recite to the fans of the game 12 years later. What do
It's a
you think?
good possibility. I've got them here printed out because I'm an old man, so I hold the paper and all that good stuff. I think we can probably get pretty close. We'll see. Now, remember, Danny might sound like he's 12 years older now,
Hmm.
but there you have it. Should we give the first one a whack?
So you have the lines that I have sent?
I do. I've got them right here in my hand.
Oh, wonderful then. All right.
The first one, we have to remember that Danny, I think he stepped in one of his own bear traps and he's been stabbed a
Yeah,
couple of times. So
he was hurt.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see what we got here. Let's give it a try. You see, you understand now, don't you? You can have me. It's how the world works now. Give part of yourself so others can live. You gotta keep me alive, though. If you kill me, the meat gets tainted. You can't eat it. Already I'm feeling dirty, right?
Wow. Gotta feel good. 12 years later, doesn't it? It's amazing.
He's just a creepy guy.
But wow. I'm amazed.
Uh, let's see. The next one was everything could have turned out okay for you folks. We got lots of uses for y'all right here. See, he's not somebody you want to invite to your house,
Yeah,
right?
he really
Yeah,
weird.
yeah. And then this was a wonderful scene when he shoots Jolene because Jolene was voiced by Cissy Jones
Yeah.
beautifully. Uh, she's just so talented, and I was really honored to be able to shoot her in the face. So here we go. It's a clean shot, though, right through the forehead. That's good shooting right there. Still, what a waste. There you go.
Wow.
Danny St. John, resurrected from 12 years ago.
On the VŌC Podcast, indeed.
We
By
should
the
have
way,
left him dead. Yeah, I think we should have
no,
left him in the
no.
barn rotting away.
Nah, 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 nah. Have you ever played the game?
The funny thing, this is the moment when I have to admit to the fact that I'm not a gamer. So when we wrapped Walking Dead, they actually got a lot of the voice cast together and kind of shot like a promo of us actually playing the game. So when our character came on screen, they give us the controller. So one of the scenes where Danny was there, they gave me the controller. That was the first time I had a game controller in my hand since when Atari first came out in the 70s, right? So I'm a kid, I grew up in the 60s. I got Atari, played Pong, for goodness sake. That's the skill level that I have is playing Pong. So yeah, I played Walking Dead for about a minute.
Well,
There you go. Yeah.
that's something to,
So
I mean.
yeah. So yes, I played the game.
Yeah, you played the game, yeah. But I'm sure you've watched gameplays or so just to see your scenes or something, yeah?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they come up all the time. YouTube is a great resource for stuff like that. If I'm researching something or, people need a clip for whatever reason or demos or things like that. So yeah, it's always fun to, somebody will mention something and I'll go, oh, you know what? God, I haven't seen that in so long. Go to YouTube and I'll go, yeah, that was pretty fun. Or if it was really early in my career, I'll go, oh my God, that was horrible.
Wow. Well, Brian, it's been amazing time with you, honestly, on this podcast. I've really
Thank you
enjoyed
very
it.
much. I definitely appreciate the invite to come out and chat with you.
Oh, I mean, I hope to talk to you again in the future. And do you think Danny would have anything to say about the VŌC podcast?
Probably say, y'all are watching the VŌC podcast. You're going to have a real good time.